Hey, my name is James. I'm the pastor of The Rising. Thanks so much for tuning in. Welcome to our podcast. I hope that this message inspires, encourages, and motivates you to grow closer to God and that you're changed by this. Remember, we're changed not by the word that we hear, but by the word that we do. So lean forward, get ready, have an expectant attitude. I believe God wants to say something to you today. You know, one of the most atrocious periods in recent history is the Holocaust. 6 million Jews were slaughtered at the hands of the Nazis. 5 million other people, Catholics, gay men and women, black people, just to name a few, were also killed. In total, 11 million people were killed at the hands of the Nazis in the name of ethnic cleansing, seeking to make a superior race. And after the Axis powers lost World War II, the Allies discovered just how deplorable the Nazis were in committing systemic killings and genocide. And I just wondered, why did this happen? Right? Have you ever wondered that? Why did this happen? How did this happen? 11 million people slaughtered. How could people do such a thing? And how come it went on for as long as it did? And why did so many people buy into this philosophy and ideology of ethnic cleansing and creating a superior race? I think the answer is found in the psychology of seeing people in groups. See, Germany was devastated after World War I. They were vanquished, defeated, reeling and recovering from the loss. And as time went on, Hitler arrived as a sort of savior for Germany, explaining to the German people that they were strong and they were made for more, and Germany could rise again if it just cleansed itself of weakness. And he began to help the German people see that the Jews were the root for so many problems in Germany. He classified these people as not people. Right? The Jews were called Untermenschen, right? Which means to be subhuman. And it wasn't like the Nazis were saying they were like less than human. No, they were saying the Jews were literally not human at all. They were subhuman, less than human. And David Livingston Smith, the co-founder and director of the Institute for Cognitive Science and Evolutionary Psychology at the University of New England, says that when people dehumanize others, they actually conceive of them as subhuman creatures, justifying acting aggressively toward them. See, Hitler helped Germany see Jews not as humans, but less than human. And he relegated them to this being of like this nameless, faceless group of rats that needed to be exterminated. And it's because a nation came alongside this thinking, it created fertile ground for the Holocaust to happen. In the same mindset and approach of grouping people into nameless, faceless groups, not seeing individuals and hearing them and understanding them, is what fueled the U.S. internment camps of the Japanese in our own country. Right? In our own country, we created concentration camps in the 1940s to house Japanese people there. It's what fueled the Rwandan genocide of the early summer of 1994, where 1 million people were killed in just 3 months. It's the thinking that caused Cortez to exterminate the Aztecs and European settlers to reduce Native Americans to live on reservations. It's this us versus them mentality, this very covert and subtle mentality that all people are capable of adopting. All of us are capable of adopting this us versus them mentality that dehumanizes others by only seeing them in groups. See, once I'm able to place you in a group and see you as less than, once I'm able to assign stereotypes to you, once I'm able to paint you with a broad brush, it allows me to ignore you and to keep calm and carry on and go about my merry ways, because I've already made a determination about you, already have it made up in my mind who you are, because you're part of this group, and this is what I think about that group. One German man recalled his time living in Germany as a boy during the Holocaust, and he said, I consider myself a Christian, I attended church since I was a small boy. We had heard the stories of what was happening to the Jews, but like most people today in this country, we tried to distance ourselves from the reality of what was really taking place. I mean, what could anyone do to stop it? And after all, I'm not one of them. That's them. They're in that group. That's their problem. And he said a railroad track ran behind our small church, and each Sunday morning, we'd hear the whistle from a distance and then the clacking of the wheels moving over the track. And so we became disturbed when one Sunday we noticed cries coming from the train as it passed by. And we grimly realized that the train was carrying Jews. They were like cattle in those cars. He said week after week that train whistle would blow. We would dread to hear the sound of those old wheels because we knew that the Jews would begin to cry out to us as they passed our church. It was so terribly disturbing, he said. He said, we could do nothing to help these poor, miserable people, yet their screams tormented us. We knew exactly at what time that whistle would blow, and we decided the only way to keep from being so disturbed by the cries was to start singing our hymns. He said by the time that the train came rumbling past the churchyard, we were singing at the top of our voices. If some of the screams reached our ears, we'd just sing a little louder until we could hear them no more. He said years have passed and no one talks about it much anymore. But I still hear that train whistle in my sleep. I can still hear them crying out for help. God, forgive all of us who called ourselves Christians, yet did nothing to intervene. He said when the train passed with the Jews on the train in the car, we as Christians in our church just sang louder. You know, we've been in this series called We Are the Church. And the theme passage for this series is the command that Jesus gave us. John chapter 13, verse 34 says, "A new command I give you, love one another. As I've loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you're my disciples if, can I underline and highlight that if you love one another." And here's how this looks practically. Galatians 5:14, "For the whole law can be summed up in this one command." Here it is. Love your neighbor as yourself. But if you're always biting and devouring one another, watch out. Beware of destroying one another. And we found in the first week of this series that a man once asked Jesus who his neighbor was. Because Jesus said, the greatest commands are this, love God and then love your neighbor. And the guy, he wanted to find out, who do I have to love and who do I not have to love? So he said, Jesus, who is my neighbor? And then Jesus told him the story of the Good Samaritan. See, Jews and Samaritans hated one another, and there was this division between them because they looked different, they believed different, they worshiped different, they lived different. Like the Jews referred to the Samaritans as dogs. They saw them as subhuman, and they hated them because that's a nameless, faceless group, and I can write them off, I can paint them with a broad brushstroke, I can assign all sorts of stereotypes to them, so I know those people. But then Jesus in the story of the Good Samaritan, and by the way, this isn't some kid's story about being a nice person. This is a story about racism. It's a story about humanity. It's a story about hatred. It's a story about reconciliation. It's a story about grace and kindness and compassion and empathy. Jesus removes this guy, the Samaritan, from the group of those people, those Samaritans, and he humanizes him. And he helps his audience see this man who's part of this group that you see as dogs and subhuman. No. He's not that at all. He's actually a man of compassion and love and care. Jesus essentially says, you, them, those people. You see them, those people that are different from you. You see them as yourself, and you love them as yourself too. That's who your neighbor is. Your neighbor is all the people who look different from you, live different from you, believe different from you, vote different from you, all of it. Jesus says that's your neighbor. So love them. You know, in this series, we've been seeking to see the one. We've been seeking to see the person and to hear their story and see their experience, realizing that all these different people from all different walks of life and backgrounds and beliefs and worldviews can come together united in Jesus, and we all together are the church. And so throughout this series, we said, we're not going to sing louder, but we're going to stop and we're going to see the person in front of us. Because when we don't see the person in front of us, when we write people off, hey, it might not lead to a Holocaust, but it leads to racism, bigotry, sexism, and worst of all, a lack of love for the very people Jesus told us to love. So, we've said we're not going to sing louder. We're not going to keep calm and carry on. But we're going to stop and see the person in front of us. And I want to introduce you to Adriana. So Adriana, you're part of our church. You started coming, how long ago was it?
It was December 2017.
Yeah,
So,
okay. And I love your story. You said, and you've shared this previously, how you started coming to our church, and you heard people talk about a church family being a church family. You're like, how can your church be your family? And then you started coming and you found that in this church. And I love the way that you and your husband Miles have gotten involved, using your gifts, your talents, just to make a difference. And I remember there was this one time, and I'm so embarrassed by it, because I was talking with you, and I found out that you were from Mexico,
Yes.
and I had no idea. I was like, I didn't know you were Mexican at all, and you're like, yeah, I get that a lot.
Yes.
But as we talked, I found out even more about you, that I think is, when I found that out, I said, oh, we have to share your story, because you fall in a group that many people write off, many people have all sorts of stereotypes about, and really strong political views on. And throughout the series, We Are the Church, we're trying to help people see not groups, but individuals, and help people see, oh, those people are this person. And you have a story, I think, that's worth sharing. And so
Thank you.
So as we talked, the group you fall into is being an illegal immigrant, I guess. I don't even know, is that the phrase? Is that the term? Or is there a better one?
Many terms for us, but
Yeah.
I like to tell people undocumented.
Yeah.
I think that sounds more humane.
That's better. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Because the group is, oh, those illegal immigrants.
Yes.
So it's like, no, wait. We're undocumented citizens? Undocumented?
Right. Yeah, I mean, citizen is someone that lives in a certain region, and
Yeah.
but we're just not U.S. citizens, but we're still individuals, and illegals, undocumented, other horrible names. But
Yeah. So tell us your story about coming to the U.S., how that happened. Just tell us your story.
Well, I was born in a western part of Mexico. It's a state called Nayarit. In particular, I was born in Santiago, Escuintla, Nayarit. So I was brought to the United States when I was 2.
Okay.
Now, before that, my father was a legal migrant worker. So he came here with a work visa for 9 years.
So the government gave him a work visa. He would come here, do work, and then go back to Mexico. And that was all
Yes.
above board, good to go. Okay.
For 9 months. So he would stay here for 9 months and go back for 3 months with us to Mexico.
Okay.
He did that for 9 years. So my dad, he had to come back to Mexico, and this was outside of his contract with his work visa, because my mom's mother was very ill, and he did that twice. And then, so there was no coming back legally for him. So he stayed in Mexico with us He did that for a couple months. He wanted to find a job, so then we moved to a different city in Mexico, which was the capital of our state. And he searched and searched for months. He could not find a job, and at this point, we didn't have any money.
Yeah.
So my grandfather was pretty much trying his best to take care of us. It was 3 kids, my mom and my dad. And he just refused to live off of my grandfather, and he couldn't do that anymore. So he decided, okay, I'm gonna go to the United States for 3 years. And my mom said, what do you mean?
Yeah.
You're gonna leave us for 3 years? And he said, yes, and I'll come back and we'll build a family here, or we'll build a home here. And my mom said, no, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to have you leave our family again. You know, we've done this for a long time. We need to be together as a family, and I'm going with you. And so that's when they brought us.
So that's when you came?
Yeah, that's when it came.
And it wasn't that, because I imagine a question might be, well, how come he just didn't find work there in Mexico? Why did he need to come here? Was he not willing to do some work? And it sounds like no. I mean, he was a migrant worker.
Oh
for
yeah,
9 years.
I worked in the farms.
And that's grueling work right there. So it sounds like he would have done anything. He just couldn't find anything.
He could not find absolutely anything. My mom said she even had a job herself that was in a corner store with us. So she would take us 3 to her job, and it was nowhere near enough.
Yeah. And so then here's this man who's faced with, what am I gonna do? Because I have to provide for my family. And you know, like as a man myself, I know. I mean, not being able to provide, not being able to do what you feel is your duty for your family, it's devastating, right? And so sounds like he's forced to make this decision. What do I do? I gotta provide for my family. There's no opportunity here. We moved to another city. There's nothing here. So he makes a decision to bring his family here. Well, with your mom fighting it, saying, hey, we're going with you.
Right.
And so then you all move here to America.
So we tried Houston, Texas for 6 months, and they experienced a lot of racism there.
Yeah.
My mother talks about it, and she just didn't like it. And so my dad had worked in Virginia, because that's where he worked. He worked here in the farms, so he knew of Virginia.
Yeah.
And one of his brothers was here. So he said, well, let's go. He learned a trade in Texas, which is drywall construction. And he said, let's go to Virginia. Let's try that place first before we head back to Mexico.
And so you're here now. You settled here. You mentioned being undocumented. Are you still undocumented?
Oh, yes.
Or how did...
Yes. We were, through all of this, we were still undocumented.
Yeah. But I mean, even now, are you undocumented? No. So tell us about that. How did that?
So we were undocumented from 1995 to 2012.
Okay.
So in 2012, the Obama administration passed DACA, which is Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, and that gave the opportunity for my siblings and I to stay here legally. So this ended the deportation for us. We were not going to get deported, and we could get a work visa, which allowed us to work, drive with a license, go to school if we wanted to, and so that became the beginning of our opportunities. So I didn't know that I was illegal.
Okay.
I was only told little things as a child, as in, don't tell people you were born in Mexico.
Okay.
Protect your family, with not saying anything like that. So I never spoke about where I was born or me being brought to America. I was taught to pretty much keep within ourselves. So as a family, we didn't have that many outside friends. And as well as we just didn't really talk about it until I was about 9. I talked about college to my mom. And I just mentioned to her that I wanted to go to college and I couldn't wait for that. And then she tells me devastating news. And, you know, honey, that's not gonna happen as of now, because you are an undocumented immigrant. And I did not understand. I asked her, what does she mean by that? And she came and told us, me in particular, because I was telling her about college, that they brought us here illegally, that by law I was not allowed to be here, so therefore I wasn't allowed to go to college. And it didn't fully hit me until I was in high school, when I was growing up and everybody was talking about college and applying.
Right.
That's when I ended up feeling shame. I just felt sad and confused. I didn't understand why people didn't want us here, when all I could see around me was that my parents were very hardworking individuals and they didn't do anything wrong.
So at 9, you're talking to your mom about this dream of going to college, and at 9, it's like, sorry, you got to dream something else. And at 9, that's when parents are like instilling that in their kids. Hey, yeah, you're going to college and all that, but because of your status, your mom would say, sorry, that's not the cards. And then it sounds like, too, growing up, you felt like you had to hide a lot of who you were. And I don't want to put this on you. Was there a fear?
Yes.
Growing up? Yeah, tell us.
Yes,
tell me about
there
that.
was fear of being separated,
Yeah.
of my father being deported. He was the breadwinner.
Yeah.
He was someone that we needed 100%, and he was out there more because he had to go to work a lot. He worked all the time, and he had to drive everywhere. So it was the fear of being even stopped by a police officer at that time, and it was just the fear of him being deported, and then thinking, what's going to happen to us?
Yeah.
Are we going to have to go back? And what life do we really have over there? That's a question that I asked my mom. Why did we come here? And she elaborated on, well, because there was no life over there. There was no money, no food, no education for us, and that's why we were here.
And so you were upset when you found out that your family was made up of undocumented immigrants, that you're in this state. But then it was revealed to you, we didn't have many options.
Yes.
So here we are.
Yes. It was confusion as to why would we be here when we were not wanted.
Yeah.
But it was then understood as I grew up, because there was no other choice.
Now, for the person who says, yeah, but you were here illegally, so that's what you deserve, what do you say to that?
I think it's wrong to tell others what they deserve.
Yeah.
I think that's not our place.
Right.
As a Christian, I'm being taught as a Christian that only God can be the one to judge us, that it's not our job as human beings to persecute others when you don't know each individual's background and their story and what could have been. And it takes someone to realize what truly they go through and to put your shoes in someone else's and to think,
to put yourself in someone else's shoes.
To put yourself in someone else's shoes and to think that could have been my family.
Right.
Because what is it, by luck I was born in Mexico, or we were just born.
Yeah.
We were just born in a country that unfortunately there was no opportunity for us.
Yeah.
So.
And if I said, yeah, but if I was in that situation, I wouldn't do it. But the thing is, I don't know what I would do because I've never been in that situation.
You're hypothetically speaking.
Yeah, and when people do that, it's like, well, I wouldn't. But you don't know because you didn't grow up.
Right. You weren't dealt those cards.
Right.
We were. And my family decided something that was beneficial for the well-being overall. I could go into detail about even the safety.
Right.
When we were living in that city in Mexico, it wasn't as criminalized. It wasn't that bad. Right. However, fast forward 5-10 years later, it became a bloodshed.
Yeah.
It became really unsafe where people outside of the city could not travel there.
Right.
You were warned, do not come to the city. This is the city we left. So looking back at that and thinking, that could have been our life, and God knows we're only where my brother could have been left at, myself, my sibling, my sister.
Yeah.
It's so many things that really, truly, my parents made the best decision all around for our safety, for our well-being, to be able to eat,
Yeah.
to be able to learn very well education, because it's a different education in Mexico as well, and to be where we are now as individuals.
So for someone though, okay, for someone who says, yeah, but it's the law, why don't you just come legally? There's a process, there's a system. Why don't you just come through that?
Right.
Tell us why.
Yes. So the process, I mean, there really isn't one for us. My parents didn't have anyone to petition them. They didn't have
Yeah.
a parent. They didn't have a spouse, because it was both of us, both of them in Mexico. They were not citizens of the United States. You have to have someone that's a U.S. citizen petition you, whether it's your parent, your spouse, or there is, so it's petitioned by your
So
parents.
someone who lives here already.
Right, that's
petitioning
a
you,
citizen.
vouching for you, essentially.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
And we didn't have that.
Right.
And not only that, but there's just no other way. My dad did do it with the work visa, but
Right.
that wasn't all of us together.
But and then there's a cost associated with it. What's the cost?
Oh, it just depends on where you're located, where you're from, the nationality. But for instance, I am a U.S. permanent resident now. I was petitioned by my husband.
Yeah.
That cost us about $8,000 to $10,000, and
For you to become a citizen.
I'm not even a citizen yet.
Oh, for you to, okay.
Yeah, for me to become a U.S. permanent resident. So that's the
Gotcha.
first step. And then you can ask, with the time frame that is approved,
Yeah.
to become a citizen, and that's a different charge.
Yeah.
So it took years.
And yeah, so how long?
So we petitioned, it took us about 3 years for the process.
Okay.
And money.
Yeah, and during that time though, you're living here. Right?
Yes,
and
I
so,
am living here.
So years ago when I was in student ministry, I would lead students down to Ensenada, Mexico, and we build houses there for families that didn't have them. It'd be like a 20 by 20 square foot house. And at the end of the week, and we had to raise the money for the supplies and all that to build the house. I think it was probably $8,000 or $10,000 to build this house, right? But at the end of the week, the families would make us a meal, right? Empanadas, tamales. I'm not saying it right, I'm sure.
Yes, you are.
Well, but you got the accent.
Yeah, but you are saying it right, even with the accent.
All right. So they would make us this meal, and I would always tell the students, hey, be grateful for the meal, because what you don't understand is this meal they're providing for us costs them a week's worth of wages, right? And so now thinking, oh wait, so okay, I want to do it the right way. I want to come legally. I want to go through the system. I want to go through the process. I need $8,000 when I'm making $50 a week that I got to live on, and it's going to take years. And I don't have somebody to petition me.
Right. Some people even make $50 a month.
Yeah. And then I think seeing that, it's easy to understand. It becomes easier to understand, like, there's no way. And this isn't politics, right? This is humanity and people, and the question is, how do we govern ourselves, but also how do we care for and love for people? And what I find fascinating is God actually speaks to this in the Old Testament. In Leviticus 19:33, he says, when a foreigner resides among you in your land, do not mistreat them. The foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born. Love them as yourself, for you were foreigners in Egypt. I am the Lord your God. Here's what's amazing to me, and this is where I miss it. This is where so many Americans miss it. God is the God of the oppressed. God is the God of the outcast, of the underdog. And for me, as a white man in America, I am anything but an underdog. I'm anything but oppressed or an outcast. So for me, and for so many people like me, when it comes to Christianity, what we often miss because it's not our experience is that God is the God of the underdog, and we can often Americanize the gospel because we aren't the underdog. It's easy for us to not understand the plight of the underdog and to even criminalize the oppressed, to criminalize the victims, right? And so we live in this state where the foreigner, like it's talked about in Leviticus, isn't treated as a native born, but is criminalized.
When we talked about this, you pointed out first and foremost, you're a Christian.
Yeah.
I am a Christian.
Yeah.
Above every other label. You know, there's so many labels that you can point out for me.
Yeah.
You can call me undocumented. You can call me a woman. You can call me a minority. You can call me uneducated. Whatever it is that you want to call me. But at the end of the day, I know I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
And that overthrows anything and everything that other people want to call me.
Yeah.
And that connects me to greater people.
Yeah. And yeah, whatever the labels are, you're my sister, right?
Yes.
We're brothers and sisters in Christ. We're
Right.
part of the same family, and the scriptures teach in the book of Revelation that every knee will bow, every tongue will confess that Jesus is Lord, and there'll be people from every tribe, tongue, language, and nation in heaven.
Right.
So we look past all these other labels and groups and differences, and we see, oh, we're all in the same family.
Right.
We're all on the same mission, moving towards the same goal. And that's why when we think about how do we interact with and how do we love people who are different from us, different legal statuses, different race, different culture, different everything, we say first and foremost my allegiance is to God, and that's the higher law for me to follow. And what I find fascinating is in the book of Leviticus, God teaches the people of Israel who were foreigners, who were oppressed, how to interact with other foreigners and people who are oppressed. He says this, when you reap the harvest of your land, don't reap to the very edges of your field or gather the gleanings of your harvest. Don't go over your vineyard a second time or pick up the grapes that have fallen. Leave them for the poor and the foreigner. I am the Lord your God. And the idea is that here are these people with their fields, and he says, just harvest it once, and anything that's left behind, leave it. And it could be, but wait, that's my field. I worked hard for it. They're going to reap the benefits of my work. They're just leeching off of the economy, off of my economy. That isn't fair. That isn't right. And God's like, exactly. Because you were foreigners and outcasts, and I gave you grace. And the last thing any of us want is fair. Because if we got what was fair, it'd be death and hell. But Jesus gave us the opposite of that. And so then we look and say, well, how do we love others? How do we give grace to others? How do we help others? And how do we see not just their legal status, but how do we see them as human? How do we see them as people? And then how do we love?
I think you mentioned two things.
Yeah.
One of them is people assume that we're leeching on the benefits that taxpayers give.
Right.
I not once had Medicaid.
Yeah.
Not once had food stamps. My family, for one, you're not allowed. You know, if you're illegal, your family's illegal, you're not allowed to get anything from DSS, Department of Social Services. You don't have a social. You don't have a social security number.
Yeah.
So there's no benefits from that.
Yeah, so you're not leeching off the economy.
No, never have I, ever.
Like
Even
getting benefits and not paying taxes, right?
No, my father paid taxes for a long, long time, and he did this so he could provide a tax ID number for us. That's an identification number
Yeah.
through the IRS, and the only reason is just so we can have some form of identification.
Yeah.
But he didn't get a refund. He just didn't get any benefit other than just an identification number for us. People know me. People know a lot about me, but some people don't know that I was illegal.
Right.
That's just not something that I share fully. I mean, why would I have to?
Yeah. And at the same time, that's not your identity.
Right.
That's not who you are. And a problem we often fall into is we lump people into groups, and that becomes their identity.
Yes, and they're far greater than that. They're hardworking people. All they want is to live a better life than where they came from, because they know suffering.
Yeah.
If you were to sit down with my father, he does not talk about this, but he knows suffering. He knows hunger. He knows not having absolutely anything, but he will not share that. He just doesn't.
Yeah. So you're not Adriana. You're not just Adriana, the kid who came here illegally and is a DACA recipient. Who are you?
I am a Christian. I am a wife. I'm a daughter. I am a dreamer. DACA gave me a lot, and being where I'm from showed me hard work and allowed me to persevere. But because of my background and the confusion of it all, the uncertainty, really, the fear, it allowed me to cling in more to my faith. It allowed me to really trust God and to give him everything, because I remember when it was darkest days of my life, as I like to call them, in high school, when I just felt like I wasn't going anywhere here anymore. My mother kept instilling God. Through it all, God was always the center point in my family, and she just kept mentioning, it's okay, God has you, God has you. And in 2012, he did. He appeared. That to me was God. After much prayer, he definitely showed up and provided. That's the biggest thing for me, being a Christian.
So it's so interesting to me that for me to love others like Jesus loves me, I need to see others, right? But as we see other people, we often see people through a lens. Like, we see people through a lens of our own experience, our own upbringing, our own background, our own all of that. And we falsely assume that they would do what we would do because of our background and stuff like that. But we don't have that. And so we often have this bias, right, towards other people, so that when other people speak, when other people say things, when other people say a statement, whatever it is, oftentimes because of our bias, we respond with dismissing, defensiveness, or disagreement and arguing. I feel like we live in a society where I either agree with you or I disagree with you, and that's it. And rather than approaching conversations like, how can I listen and how can I be changed by this, it's, do I agree or disagree? And we feed that through our bias. And so you were talking about bias earlier. Tell us something about that.
I would say it's important for each one of us to determine the biases that we have within ourselves, the bias of where am I from, knowing yourself, being self-aware of who you are and those around you, understanding that the world doesn't evolve around you. There's billions of people on this planet, and
that's news. Wait, the world doesn't revolve around me. Yeah.
So it's being more understanding of, you may have misunderstood a lot because of your background, of maybe what your parents taught you because they didn't know any better. And I understand that a lot of people aren't going to understand me. That makes sense to me. And I'm not asking for understanding. I'm just asking for sympathy, for just some chance, just an opportunity, just so you can stop bashing people like me.
Yeah.
And we're taught this as kids. If you have nothing nice to say,
don't say it. Yeah.
It just seems really simple back then, but it really does go a long way.
Yeah.
Because words matter. And no matter what, I think words hurt more than bricks.
Yeah.
Because they last a long time. The words people are speaking out against a certain population, not just legal immigrants, a lot of others, those words do matter. They bring up policies that can make or break someone. And it's essential for us to control ourselves, to know when not to speak are one to speak up. And the biggest thing we have is our voice. The biggest thing we have is our relationships with communities. And I just feel people need to be more careful, more mindful, and more self-aware about people around them.
Yeah.
I feel proud of where I am. I actually say I was born in Mexico now, happily.
So before you used to not?
I used to
because
not.
you hid that. You felt fear and you had to hide it. But
Yes,
now,
I tell everyone, and I'm quick to tell people, I am from Mexico. And some people assume that I came here legally. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because they picture someone differently.
oh yeah.
But as soon as I say that, I say, I was brought here legally. And it's like a blank
Yeah.
look.
Because you don't fit the description
Right.
of someone crossing the border illegally. Yeah.
But I am.
I love it. And you're proud
Yeah.
to be where you're from.
Yes, 100%. I am proud to be a Mexican immigrant and to be able to pursue my dreams in the United States. And because of my background, I feel it's made me stronger. It's made me able to take on more that life may throw at me. It's just molded me to be the person I am. It gave me the parents that I have that persevered and kept persisting that I continue no matter what, no matter how many doors shut in front of me, because a lot have been shut.
Yeah.
I just kept going, and I am really proud as to where I am now, but not in a way of, I don't want to sound not humble, I guess, but I'm proud because of my family.
Yeah.
I'm proud because of I know what it meant for them to leave their country. I know what it cost my mother.
Yeah.
You know, it cost them far beyond money.
Right.
It cost them their culture. It cost them leaving their homeland that they love. And how can I repay that? I can't, but to make them proud.
Well, Adriana, I really appreciate you taking the time to share your story. And I think when we stop and listen and hear others' experience, instead of responding and defending and dismissing and stereotyping and writing off, and I think when we stop and listen, it helps us do exactly what Jesus said, and that's to love our neighbor.
Yes.
And it's to love others the way He loves us. And I think it's really important for people to hear your story and to see you and to see that you are part of the church. And the church is made up of so many different people with so many different backgrounds, lifestyles, experiences. And I'm glad you're part of the church.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak out about my story and for giving me that platform.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for tuning in. I hope you were inspired, motivated, and encouraged by what you heard. And I'm so grateful that you got a chance to tune in. And I'm also grateful for all the people who give financially to the work of this ministry so that we can continue to get the word out to people. And I want to invite you, if you haven't given to this ministry, if you've been blessed, encouraged by what we do, I want to invite you to consider giving to financially support this work. And if you've been giving, thank you so much for your generosity. Hey, check us out online, wearetherising.com. Plug in that way. Thanks again for tuning in. And I pray that this week would be one of the best ever, because what we know is the best is yet to come.